Bruce Arians sees that every step Shedeur takes is amplified, dissected, and spun into content, leaving little room for error or growth. It starts with Deion Sanders. His legacy, charisma, and camera-ready energy built the foundation for Shedeur's public image long before his NFL debut. That spotlight, once empowering, now feels like a trap. His defense of Sanders isn't just about protecting one player. It's about exposing the absurdity of a system where a young QB's smirk can overshadow a hard-fought drive.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This tension between fame and fundamentals defines the sport's current era. Shedeur isn't the architect of this spectacle, but he is its most visible face. And Arians' intervention is a reminder that no matter how media-savvy a player is, the game still demands discipline, patience, and development. The concern isn't whether Sanders can handle the attention. It's whether football can survive being more entertainment than sport. Shedeur Sanders, with a last name that echoes through football history and a face made for the camera, has become something more than a quarterback. He's the new symbol of what the NFL has turned into, a collision between sports and spectacle, talent and trend, grind and gloss. And the noise around him? It's deafening. Not because of what he's doing on the field, though he's solid, but because of how he exists off it. Every expression, every interview line, every sideline glance turns into a moment, a meme, a quote, a controversy. And before you even finish processing what happened on the field, the algorithm is already feeding you the reaction takes. Is Shedeur overrated? Is he too cocky? Can he live up to the hype? These aren't questions rooted in gameplay. They're products of a media system built to churn out attention at any cost. It's not just coverage. It's content. And into that storm stepped Bruce Arians. The longtime coach, never one to sugarcoat a message, delivered a blunt truth. Not an attack on Sanders. Not some old man yells at cloud rant. Just a pointed observation. Maybe we've lost the plot. Maybe the obsession with building a brand is starting to eclipse the importance of building a career. Maybe, just maybe, we're setting these young athletes up to fail by turning them into viral commodities before they've had the chance to fully develop their craft. He wasn't trying to go viral. But in this landscape, anything you say about a high-profile name like Shedeur Sanders becomes viral by default. Arians wasn't wrong. He was honest. And that's what made people uncomfortable. Because the uncomfortable truth is, the NFL and its media arms have created a reality where a quarterback's Q rating matters more than his QB rating. Where teams are just as likely to promote a player's merch drop as they are his next game. Where the line between journalism and influencer content has not just blurred, it's vanished. Shedeur Sanders didn't ask for this circus, but he fits into it perfectly. He's smart, composed, charismatic, and yes, he knows how to play the game off the field. That's not a flaw. That's survival. But Arians' point was never about whether Sanders can handle the spotlight. It was about why that spotlight is so intense to begin with. Why every young player now has to be part athlete, part celebrity, part brand manager, and part crisis comms expert. Why development is being sacrificed at the altar of digital engagement. The NFL has always been big business. But what we're seeing now is a version of the sport where the marketing strategy drives the football narrative, not the other way around. And that's where the cracks are starting to show. Because it's not just fans and media driving this. Teams and organizations are fully complicit. They amplify it. They feed into it. They chase it because clicks mean cash. Engagement means relevance. And in that chase, the player becomes the product. Not for what they do, but for how they trend. It's a feedback loop. A player shows personality. The media picks it up. The public reacts. The team promotes it. And suddenly, that player isn't just competing for a win on Sunday. They're competing for attention every single day of the week. And when they're young, that's dangerous. Shedeur is the perfect case study in this modern machine. Talented, marketable, connected, and navigating it all with an awareness that's almost uncanny. But the reality is, even someone with his calm and polish isn't immune to the effects of overexposure. No one is. And that's what makes this so complicated. Because, on the one hand, the attention feels earned. He's performed. He's brought energy and confidence, and a clear vision of who he is. On the other hand, it's disproportionate. His every move becomes a media event. His name gets thrown into debates that have nothing to do with his actual play. And that's the issue. This isn't a conversation about whether Shedeur is good. It's a conversation about whether the media culture we've built is good for him, or anyone like him. The pressure on young athletes has always been high. But now, it's amplified through every tweet, reel, live stream, and post-game soundbite. There is no off switch. There's just momentum. And momentum doesn't care if a player is still learning, still growing, still figuring it out. It only cares if they're interesting. Bruce Arians didn't want to put Shedeur down. He wanted to put the system on blast. Because when branding overtakes development, and when spectacle outpaces substance, the game itself starts to suffer. Not just for the athletes, for everyone. It becomes harder to evaluate talent objectively when narratives are shaped by personality and perception. It becomes harder for players to focus when every moment is a potential headline. And it becomes harder for teams to foster real growth when they're chasing engagement instead of execution. And here's where it gets even more twisted. When Arians said what he said, he instantly became part of the cycle. The very same media culture he was criticizing weaponized his comments for more content. Bruce Arians criticizes Shedeur became a trending headline, which only drew more attention to Sanders, which created more reaction videos, which then looped back into the same machine Arians was trying to slow down. You can't beat the algorithm. You can only feed it. And so, the cycle continues. Not just with Shedeur, but with every young star who dares to have a personality. The game now asks them to be more than athletes. And when someone tries to say, let them breathe, the machine spins it into another narrative. So where do we go from here? The truth is, this is the sport now. It's entertainment. It's branding. It's performance. And it's not going back. But there is space for nuance. There's space for leadership, for restraint, for voices like Arians to remind us that development matters, that players are people, that fame is a powerful force. And when it comes too fast, it can crush even the most composed. It's not about silencing players. It's not about resenting their confidence. It's about balance. About letting performance speak before personality takes over. About giving young athletes the space to succeed before we ask them to represent the entire future of the sport. Shedeur Sanders may be navigating this storm with impressive control, but that doesn't mean the storm is harmless. The spotlight doesn't always burn you at first. Sometimes it just slowly wears you down. Not with one scandal, but with endless scrutiny. Not with backlash, but with constant pressure to perform, not just as an athlete, but as a persona. And the deeper question is, what happens when this becomes the standard? When every young athlete is expected to live up to a media profile before they've even reached their peak. When the real wins are secondary to the trending ones. That's the tension this video unpacks. That's the future of football hanging in the balance. If you're still watching, now's your turn. What do you think? Has the line between athlete and influencer officially blurred too far? Are we helping these players or pushing them into a spotlight they're not ready for? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're breaking down every twist in this collision of culture, media, and sports. Because if this Shedeur Sanders media storm taught us anything, it's that the game might still be played on the field, but the real action is happening off it. This isn't just about Shedeur Sanders, Bruce Arians, or one media controversy. It's about the entire infrastructure of modern sports. We're witnessing a fundamental shift where visibility is currency and attention is the real MVP. And if you step back and look at the full picture, it's not just chaotic, it's calculated. Every week, Shedeur Sanders steps onto the field, but he's also stepping onto a stage. And unlike in decades past, where a young quarterback would be allowed to grow quietly, behind the scenes, he's doing it in front of millions. Not just football fans, but passive viewers, influencers, commentators, and opportunists, everyone ready to dissect his throws and his tweets. And here's the kicker. His actual performance isn't always the main event. That's the core issue Bruce Arians tried to raise before his comments were swept up and fed back into the very system he criticized. His argument wasn't radical. It wasn't even harsh. It was a simple observation from someone who's been inside locker rooms, managed egos, nurtured rookies, and seen firsthand how media hype can derail potential. He said the spotlight's too bright. He said young players should be given space to focus on development instead of being tossed into the fire of public discourse before their cleats are even broken in. And instead of nodding in agreement, the machine clipped the soundbite, slapped on a headline, and turned him into the controversy. That's the irony no one wants to talk about. Arians became content because he talked about content. His warning became fuel for the same fire he was trying to put out. And Shedeur? He got pulled further into the spiral of discussion, reaction, and counterreaction. The system feeds on itself. One coach tries to protect a player from media overexposure, and in doing so, ends up accelerating it. The attempt to restore balance backfires because balance doesn't sell. Drama does. And if you're a young athlete watching this unfold, what's the takeaway? Simple. Stay relevant. Stay online. Stay viral. Because staying excellent isn't enough anymore. That's the cultural shift eating away at the foundation of sports. Not just football, but all sports. There's a growing emphasis on how a player presents themselves, not just how they perform. Teams don't just scout for speed and strength anymore. They monitor media presence, personality, and potential marketability. And the stakes are high. Get it right, and you're everywhere. Endorsements, interviews, magazine covers, podcasts, documentaries. Get it wrong, and you're wasting your platform, not building your brand. Or worse, boring. So athletes are forced into this duality. Be the player and be the persona. Be the competitor and the content. And for someone like Shedeur, who's uniquely positioned at the intersection of legacy, performance, and personality, the pressure is doubled. Because people expect him to carry all of it with grace. The family name, the expectations, the scrutiny, the spotlight, the social media virality. And to his credit, he's managing it with the calmness of someone twice his age. But that doesn't mean the expectations are fair. That's where the system gets ugly. Because if Shedeur wasn't media savvy, if he stumbled through press conferences, or didn't have the same confident posture under the camera's gaze, you know what the narrative would be. He'd be called immature, unprepared, lacking leadership qualities. So it's a no-win situation. Handle the fame well, and you get accused of being too polished or too focused on your image. Handle it poorly, and you're torn apart before you even have time to learn. And yet we keep demanding that these athletes deliver both results and relatability, that they win on the field and entertain off of it, that they shoulder the weight of their careers and the ever-hungry, always refreshing digital landscape. No breaks, no grace period, just constant, endless performance. The saddest part? This is now so normalized that it barely raises eyebrows. No one bats an eye when a post-game interview goes viral for reasons that have nothing to do with the game. No one questions why sports media spends more time debating players' tweets than their touchdowns. No one pauses to ask, what does this do to the player? Because that would mean taking a hard look at how we've commodified every part of their lives. Shedeur Sanders is living proof of this. His name generates conversation, clicks, outrage, praise, everything except quiet. And he hasn't even had the chance to build a full NFL career yet. That's how fast the machine moves. And when Bruce Arians said slow down, the reaction wasn't reflection, it was resistance. People accused him of clinging to the past, of being unable to adapt, of not understanding how today's athletes have to play the game off the field. But deep down, everyone knew he had a point. Because when the dust settles, the game will still be here. The hype will fade. The algorithms will shift. And all that's left will be the player, exhausted, elevated, or erased by the demands we placed on them. We say we want greatness, but we create distractions. We say we care about growth, but we celebrate chaos. And every time someone tries to call it out, we turn them into content too. So, where do we go from here? Do we let the machine keep spinning, dragging every new talent through the same exhausting loop of hype, backlash, and burnout? Or do we finally take a breath and recognize that not every moment has to be a moment? That not every player has to be a personality? The thing is, this isn't just about protecting athletes from media overload. It's about preserving the integrity of the sport itself. Because when storylines are prioritized over strategy, when personality overshadows preparation, and when followers matter more than fundamentals, what are we even watching anymore? Is it still football? Or is it just football-themed entertainment? Shedeur Sanders represents the eye of this storm. And to his credit, he's navigating it better than most. But let's not mistake his ability to swim for proof that the waters aren't dangerous. Let's not pretend this pace is sustainable just because he makes it look that way. What happens when the next Shedeur isn't so composed? What happens when a young athlete gets caught in this cycle and doesn't know how to manage it? Are we building them up just to watch them collapse? Because if the system continues to value virality over value, attention over ability, we're going to see more young stars burned out before they ever reach their peak. And worse, we'll be complicit in it. That's why Bruce Arians spoke up. Not to criticize the player, to criticize us. The entire sports media ecosystem that's become so addicted to the next headline that it forgets there's a human being behind it. So the next time you see Shedeur trending, ask yourself, is this about football? Or is this about feeding a narrative? And more importantly, does it help him? Or are we just watching another player get swallowed by a system too big, too fast, and too loud to care? What's really happening here? It's bigger than Shedeur, bigger than Arians, bigger than just one off-season storyline. It's the slow erosion of what sports used to stand for, and the unapologetic rise of what it has become. This is a new age, where being a great athlete is only step one. Now you've got to be a walking, talking, highly engaging, media-trained, brand-aligned personality with a highlight reel and a social media strategy. You've got to go viral, not just go vertical. And Shedeur Sanders? He gets it. He's fluent in this new language. Not only because he was born into it, being the son of Dion Primetime, Sanders practically guarantees a PhD in media control, but because he's playing the game both on and off the field, and doing it with undeniable composure. But Bruce Arians saw past the polish. He didn't see a cocky kid. He saw a pressure cooker. Because for every confident quote and viral video, there's a young athlete carrying the weight of an entire machine built to mine attention from his every move. Arians wasn't criticizing Shedeur's choices. He was questioning the environment that demands those choices. And that environment is ruthless. It's the media cycle that doesn't sleep, doesn't blink, and doesn't forget. It's the system that rewards a mic drop more than a clean pocket presence. That cares more about how fast a post trends than how fast a quarterback reads a blitz. And let's be clear, Arians has seen this show before. He's coached players through peaks and pitfalls. He's watched the media anoint stars too early and discard them just as fast. So when he speaks about the danger of overexposure, it's not a theory. It's a warning based on decades of watching players buckle under pressure they didn't create, but couldn't avoid. That's what makes this moment feel so stark. Because Shedeur isn't just another quarterback getting too much attention. He's the perfect symbol for this new model. Someone talented enough to compete at a high level, but also media savvy enough to become a headline machine without even trying. And the system? It loves that. The system amplifies that. Because to the NFL and the media networks attached to it, this is a dream scenario. A young, charismatic player with a famous father and a flair for the moment? That's a walking PR goldmine. So it doesn't matter whether Shedeur is ready for this level of attention. The machine decided he is. And once the machine decides, it doesn't ask permission. It just moves. Suddenly, Shedeur isn't just leading an offense. He's leading conversations. Sports panels debate his attitude. Social media dissects his every clip. Fans either defend him with blind loyalty or tear him down like he's already peaked. There's no middle ground. There's no development arc. There's just now. And that is exactly the issue Bruce Arians was trying to spotlight. This isn't about slowing down Shedeur. It's about slowing down us. The system. The media. The fans. The expectations. Because growth takes time. But the culture we've created doesn't give these players time. It gives them spotlights and sound bites, and then asks why they aren't living up to some idealized version of greatness we've manufactured through TikToks and pre-game montages. And it's not just unfair. It's unsustainable. We've seen what happens when the hype machine outruns the player's process. The rise is rapid, but so is the fall. And when the fall comes, the machine doesn't take accountability. It just moves on to the next shiny name. And that's what's so brutal. Because if Shedeur does falter, even briefly, you know exactly what's coming. The same voices that built him up will pivot overnight. Was Shedeur overhyped? Is he distracted by media fame? Did he buy into his own buzz? None of that would be fair. But all of it would be inevitable. Because the machine is never satisfied. That's what makes Arians' comments so important. He didn't throw gasoline on the fire. He tried to build a firebreak. He tried to give a little perspective, to remind people that these are young athletes, not content creators. But the irony is, his comments became content. They got clipped, twisted, spun, and served back to the same audience hungry for drama. It's a cycle, and it's brutal. So now we're left with this strange paradox. Arians, a seasoned veteran of the sport, tries to protect a young quarterback from the excesses of attention. And in doing so, accidentally contributes to the very frenzy he was pushing back against. And Shedeur? He keeps going. Because he has to. There's no room to opt out. No pause button on public perception. The game is constant. The audience is impatient. And the narrative moves faster than any actual play on the field. So while Shedeur Sanders may be handling this with maturity and skill, the real question is whether we are. Are we allowing athletes to grow, or are we assigning them roles in a never-ending performance they didn't sign up for? Are we evaluating what they actually do, or what they represent in a culture obsessed with visibility? Because if this is the new normal, we need to admit it. If we're going to treat athletes like influencers, let's stop pretending we care about their focus. If we're going to turn press conferences into performance art, let's stop acting shocked when players act accordingly. And if we're going to ask 21-year-olds to carry the weight of their last name, their team, their brand, and their digital image, we better start asking who's actually looking out for them. Because right now it's not the machine. So shout out to Bruce Arians for at least trying to press pause. Even if the machine didn't listen, even if the message got lost in the noise, it was a kind of honesty that sports desperately needs more of. And as for Shedeur, the spotlight is on. The cameras are locked in. And the game continues on the field and far beyond it. Let us know in the comments what you think. Has the hype gotten out of control, or is this just the price of modern fame? And don't forget to subscribe if you're into real talk, real drama, and the stories behind the spectacle. Because the plays may change, but the circus, it's here to stay.